There we go. There we go. I'd like to welcome everybody here to our next Zoom. We have the very important, well, the all-important topic of safety. You'll note that in the latest NOC newsletter, Len had written his article about safety. And of course, everybody is very much aware of the tragic incident that had recently occurred in Colorado with a weight throw having slammed into a spectator, killing that person instantly. We are very sorry for the families, thinking about them, and the young man who had thrown the implement, who now has to live with this for the rest of his life. We're very sorry for him. This is going to be a program that I think you'll find to be of great interest for its slide content and for the content that we also have. Beginning with our second slide, we have Mark Heckel on. Mark occupied the position I now occupy for 4 years, and he's the individual, a very talented individual who has been responsible for placing on the NOC website and also the USATF officials certification website all the reviews that we go through. That's a big job, and we're very grateful to Mark for all his efforts. So we'll go ahead and share our presentation here. And after we begin, Duke, I've got to make sure that I've got everything up here. Let me see. You guys are looking at a slideshow, aren't you? Everybody see the slides?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yes.
going to introduce an individual who has been very key in the presentation that you are about to have. Certification Chair of the Southern California Association, Mr. Duke Fuller.
Hello, hello. Okay. You ready to go to the second slide? Thank you all for being here.
Any other introductory comments, Duke?
I'm just really grateful that everyone's here to learn and observe on the importance of safety in our sport that we love so much.
Okay, are you going to control?
Let's see. I believe slide 2. I don't think I can. You're actually in control. There you go.
All right. This is the one that I had come upon and found to be of great interest. You'll notice that Mark Heckel is shown beneath the title as Director Throws Safety Certification Program for the National Throws Coaches Association. And so I'm going to turn this over to Mark to talk about the situation here, what he can tell us about this. Mark? Well, I was told by Mark that he would be on the
And
Zoom.
there I am. I
Oh,
was
there you
had to
are.
unmute
Okay.
there. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Mark.
12, 13 years ago, Rob Lasorsa, who at that time was the national shot put coordinator for USA Track and Field, organized the National Throws Coaches Association and asked me to come on board. Rob and I have been friends for next to forever. And one of the things that we were both concerned about was making sure that we were doing something along the lines of throw safety. One of the things that we both agreed on, and as we brought some other people on board, like Mike Sargent from South Carolina and some other folks, We all agreed that throw safety was something that had to be addressed, that really needed to be addressed. And we want to make sure that it was addressed in such a way not to scare people, but actually to make them aware that, there are problems out there. There are situations, especially with younger officials or officials who've never worked any of the more dynamic throws like the hammer, that there are certain things that we need to take precaution of. An outgrowth of that was we decided to create a throw safety program. We offered this at our first couple of national conventions. Was actually a 2-day course of about 6 hours. And we went through our throw safety handbook. We referred to it as a certification handbook because we did issue a certificate at the end that was valid for 2 years, simply to say that you had gone through this course, that you've been made aware of these things, that you had some degree of training and some degree of knowledge pertinent to throw safety. An outgrowth of that was the handbook. This, as you can see, this was the 5th edition from 2018. I have not come back to revisit that since then, not that a whole lot has changed. It is due for revision, and one of the things I'm going to do with it is I am going to take it online on my own personal website and also through my YouTube channel. And the handbook goes through a number of things. It's not just oriented towards coaches, it's also oriented towards officials as well. We talk about inspection of implements, what to look for in an implement, when to look at an implement. For instance, even though I saw Bruce Long on here and Terry Bone from Three Rivers, like I am, you may not always have an implement person at your event after they have certified the implements and you have them available to you. What happens if a discus hits the cage or hits one of the poles? What should you do? Should you take a look at it? And what do you do? What are the things to look for where it may be damaged, where it may cause injury to the athlete or to someone else? How do you, what should you be looking for when you're doing a walk around of your throwing cage? What should you be looking for as far as netting goes, as far as holes in the netting? What are some of the ways that you can mitigate some of this, some of the problems? What do you do? There's a whole section in there on that deals with the legality of what is negligence, what is willful negligence, what is reasonable care. And those definitions are in there. Those were actually provided by Shelby Sharp, who was an attorney. And Shelby had done, Shelby was, as Rory can attest, Shelby was the man when it came to discussing those things as far as liability and being responsible and taking reasonable care, those kind of things. And I actually asked Shelby to provide that information, and he was more than willing to do so. So the handbook itself is rather extensive. It also has some maps, some charts at the end with some recommended safety zones. We broke them down into green, yellow, light red, and red. So obviously, these are just recommendations as to, well, if you're in this area, for instance, in this shot put, if you or anyone else is behind the center line of the shot put circle, that's pretty much a green area. The likelihood of being struck by an implement in that area is pretty low. If you're in the front half of the circle, then obviously the risk increases. If you're in the impact area, obviously that would be a red zone where the likelihood of getting hit is actually pretty high. And these were set up as recommendations so that as officials or as coaches, when they're looking at a particular competition, where do we want to have people be and where don't we want to have people at? The situation in Colorado, from what I've been able to ascertain and the information that I've been provided, was poorly managed. Just from my view of what I've been able to see and what I've been able to find out. There are certain things that I, as an official, had I been in that situation, I would have walked away. I would have stopped the competition, said, no, we're not going to do this. And if meat management chose not to listen to me, okay, I'm out of here because I'm not going to assume that risk. Uh, we assume risk every time we go out there, regardless of what the event is. The shot probably is the safest of the events because you can see it coming. It flies as a projectile, so it's going to go in pretty much a straight line. But there are things with the discus. How do we look at wind? The late Al Minturn would always bring a windsock and had a windsock out in the sector, but that doesn't necessarily account for winds aloft. So as you move up in ability level, when you move up to the elite level, and those athletes are throwing the discus higher and longer, they're getting up into different wind patterns that may be different from what they are at ground level. Again, the shot largely unaffected by wind, but the discus is. The javelin certainly is. The hammer, not so much, again, because it's fundamentally a projectile. But the speed of the hammer is a different problem that we have to take into consideration.
So, Mark,
yes, go ahead.
one of the things that I found very interesting about your booklet here is what you just got through mentioning with the color-coded diagrams for relative danger spots, which of course is what you were just talking about. And
Yes.
you show the graduation out from sector lines of the danger zone. Uh,
Yes.
we know everybody here who's ever worked throws knows that you'll come upon venue after venue where the flagging is very neatly lined up with the sector lines. And you probably have gone through the process of widening the flagging to better reflect what actually happens. So,
Yeah, and in fact, the NCAA, I have to go back and look and see if it's still in there. But the NCAA at one point had a safety sector, or safety zone of 60 degrees. So actually, it would widen from the circle on out, and so from the javelin runway on out, it does get wider because there's more variance. There's more opportunity for the implement to leave the sector. It doesn't know where the discus and the javelin especially don't know where the sector is. They're not going to abide by the lines all the time. So we widen those because the longer the implement's in the air, the greater the chance it has to be affected by wind or by some other factor, and the greater the chance it has to go wider the further out it goes. We saw this in Eugene with throwing the discus on the infield and in the javelin on the infield, that depending on what the prevailing winds are, it can wind up in a long jump pit. I believe we saw it 2 years ago, if memory serves.
yeah,
So,
we'll be seeing that later on during our presentation. One of the things that occurred at Hayward during a hammer competition was what you had just got through mentioning of the ability of the better throwers to launch the implement far higher than a person who's not as strong. And an official, Dan Hirely, who was flight coordinator for the event, was actually hit on the head and shoulder with a hammer that had been released at a very high angle. And anybody who's seen Hayward's hammer cage knows that it's built to spec. So you have a 20-meter netting that is for the most part of the cage, and then it has the oh gosh, what is it, like 11-meter, um, um, uh, at least 10-meter panel, movable front panel, and this hammer came over the lower part. Dan had his hat on and wasn't able to see the trajectory. and was very obviously stunned by the impact of this hammer. And who would have ever thought that would have happened?
Yeah, I happened to be there when Dan got hit, and with the hammer, if the when you see the diagram, there is no safe area with a hammer because the hammer can break, it can skid underneath the netting, it can puncture the netting on virtually anywhere. So we don't really have a green zone. We don't have a yellow zone. We consider everything to be at least light red, which is a moderate risk, to dark red, which is higher risk. Um, so the hammer really does not have, there really is no safe zone for the hammer because there are a multitude of things that can happen. A wire can break, the ball can skid under. The handle is, and one of the more forgotten things about the hammer is the wire in the handle itself. The wire can impale somebody, doesn't necessarily stop with the netting. And the big thing to remember, especially with any caged event like the discus or the hammer, the um, the intent of the netting or whatever that material may be is not necessarily to stop the implement, it's to arrest it as much as possible. It can still penetrate, it can still go through that netting. So we never assume that it's going to completely stop it because we just don't know. It depends on how old the netting may be. And one of the things, again, one of the things we talk about in the handbook is to inspect the netting. Are there holes in it? Are there frayed areas of it? Has it been left out? Sometimes, especially at high schools, they may take the netting down during the off season. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they leave it up year round. And if it gets wet, it can rot. It can be very fragile and wind up breaking, even though it looks safe. It may not truly be safe. So the handbook goes through all of these things and again provides those diagrams at the end. It also provides a checklist, a safety checklist for each of the four primary events, shot, discus, hammer, and javelin, that you can print and that you can take with you. It's a one pager, you can laminate it and take it with you. Or if you're in a situation where, for instance, at a high school meet, where the English teacher, like Scott Phoenix, is running the discus and has no prior experience or has little prior experience, you can copy that and give that to them and say, here are the things that you want to look for. Here are the things that you want to be aware of and have some situational awareness about that could happen during the discus. So let's try to mitigate those as best we can by not having people where they shouldn't be, by not letting athletes into the impact area to retrieve, or by using, we also talk about different styles of warm up. One of the ones that I like, especially for high school, when we have a limited number of people, is the salvo warm up. And we've used this at the national level as well. We'll take 5 throws and then we'll stop. We'll go out, we'll retrieve those, and then we'll take 5 more. We'll stop, we'll retrieve those, and we continue through that process. It takes a little longer to warm up, but it's much safer that way to warm up than to just, well, you throw it and then you kind of walk out there and, you let the athlete go out and yeah, they can get their own javelin. No, we don't want to do that.
So everybody, I highly recommend you access this very informational booklet that Mark has produced. You'll find it to be of great interest, and you'll be very happy that you had become aware of it.
So Scott, just to call attention to that statement there, I don't think you're able to see the chat. Somebody's asked for a copy of the diagram to be on the screen, and then they're also asking how do they obtain that booklet.
So Mark, answer that about attaining it.
It is online. I have to remember what the URL is. I will send that to you, Scott. I believe it's still, let me jump out real quick. I also
looks like Joe has dropped that in the chat for everybody.
If all people do is type in throws safety certification handbook, it'll come up. And
yeah,
you'll have
my longtime friend Joe Shoker. How are you, Joe? Thank you for dropping that in there. Joe has used my materials in the past, and Joe and I have talked about different things in regard to throw safety. I'll also mention that this handbook has been used in at least 10 different lawsuits here in the United States and has been accessed in more than 50 countries around the world as
Well, I'll
just
be
as
darned.
a guideline. I also
Ah.
want to just real quick draw attention to something that Sue Babcock had put in there. Said flagging should be in danger zone to at least 55 degrees. I like 60 because it's easier. It's a isosceles triangle, so it's much easier to mark that off. Go out 10, over 10, back 10, and it's much easier to set up than the 55 degrees. It does say at least 55. I like 60 because it's easy, it's quick to set up, and it also grows as you move out. So you do have a bigger buffer as you move away from the circle. So
Yeah,
thank you for throwing that in there.
very useful information. We are going to go on here. Um,
Thanks, everybody.
all right, so here are some examples of a variety of things that you can come upon and shake your head at. Uh, this is at a place called the Concordia Throws Center. That's the thing that Mac Wilkins had begun. It's up by the Portland airport. And so there's a competition that was being held here. I came upon this and thought, whoa, what is going on here? So as you can see, the arrows point to the fact that there's nobody out there in a danger zone other than, the people who are helping with the event. But for goodness sake, what was going on with this netting? And the fact that there's nobody behind or no netting behind. So look at all the people who are in the potential line of danger. What would be the best thing to have done here? Anybody can chime in. What would be the best thing to have done here?
Walk away.
No cage, no throw.
No cage, no
Shut it
throw.
down.
Sorry, Charlie.
Shut it down.
Yeah. This is the site of the USATF indoor from a couple years ago, the podium in Spokane, a very fine facility. This is one of the throws cages, one of two. And this area here, I believe, is where a weight throw had been launched and found its way through the netting as it had been set up at that time. This is Graham Dudek from Athletic Timing, who pointed out to me the impact of the weight throw right here on the track. This is the initial impact. There was apparently a race in action. As you can see from the sector over here, chalk is used to on the bottom of the implement. And of course, that was very useful in seeing what had happened here. So that's impact number one. Impact number two. So it hit, bounced here, and then impact number three at this point. Well, everybody thought that they had the netting all good to go. I had been up there before and had taken a look, and it seemed to me that things were in good order. But this is one where there just happened to be a launching of the implement, and it found an opening. I assume some of you on this Zoom have worked at the podium and have worked throws. If you have done that, do you have any comment about your experience? Well, it's a nice facility, and they have taken steps to correct that. And so we're very happy to see that they have done that.
You know,
Here's
I work,
something that
and
you
I can add. So I worked at the podium regularly, but I do not work in the throws, but I work in the high jump. So, and I had not seen the pictures that you sent, and it's very scary to see how close it could have been of a mishit to someone. But I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly the spots that you indicated. So thank you for showing that.
Yeah, it is just another one of those situations where it something could have been very serious, uh, uh, and it's just a matter of luck. Um, Here's something that you might find at any number of high school um, events. The young official over here has allowed this person to sit here, but on the other hand, she might not have even recognized that this person is here because her attentions could be devoted entirely to the throwers. But this is a situation where informed the mother in as nice a manner as possible. She was very cooperative with it, that it would not be a good idea to continue being seated there.
If we may go back to the podium for a moment, that was fixed before the next season.
Let me see if I can go back here. I've got a right there.
So the netting was fixed before the next season. So
Yeah. What happened was that the netting around the throwing circle itself was too low, and the netting out in the sector was fine, but the thrower threw it out of the
over.
ring over the netting around the ring itself.
Do you see where the arrow tip is? Is that where it had come out, or is it to the right of that?
That looks about right, yeah.
Oh, or to the right, perhaps. It's a little hard
Well,
to
the reason
tell.
why I thought here is because if it launched out over here, that would put it in line with the trajectory to hit about here, which is where the first impact was. But yeah, that was pretty spectacular. It went across the entire track.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a wonderful place, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. It is.
All right. Here's something. What do you see here? What event is occurring?
I assume they're throwing discus.
No, Bob, there's a person in a ring. Look at person's left hand.
Hammer.
No,
No.
Scott.
I don't see a toe board.
Weight throw.
Weight throw.
that is a weight.
It is weight throw.
Oh,
It is a
geez.
weight. Yeah, oh Jesus. That is that's going through my mind. Ah, gosh. Yeah.
Is there anybody in a safe position there?
Who, an
Thrower.
official?
Thrower.
Yeah, true. Okay.
Bro, about the only one that do anything.
Yeah, so no netting, obviously. The netting's over here. The
Officials napping.
well, looking at I think results, looking at paperwork. Here we have a couple towels that are down. These are over the bolts that stick up because the toe board here was removed in order to have this.
Oh, yeah.
But at this event, we just should have said, well, no, we're not officiating at it, and just let it be. Officials, though, run the risk of not being asked back if you speak out about something. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about fabled places where people like to or very much want to work. You might have come upon a situation like this.
Yeah.
Not a good one.
Well, this is a very convenient way to
She's
get
just
your
about on top of
measuring
her.
tape,
Uh,
but not a good idea to stand inside the cage, is it?
Base.
It's not a good idea to have cyclone fence cage either.
No, no, but you know, you've got all these facilities that have funky cages, and here's an example of that very thing. This is a practice session for D1 athletes at the championships last summer. This is at a place called Lane Community College. And like a lot of community colleges, they're not rolling in dough. They don't have the money to have Lance Deal come down and install a superb cage. Although, speaking of him, he did, in fact, put in a very fine one at this facility that's on the opposite end of where this happens to be. But this was set up for practice. And you'll notice that there is this pulley system that connects each of these arms. You'll notice that the angle of position of this arm is higher than this one. This one is not pulled up congruent with that one. Well, most people are throwing right-handed, and this area right here is problematic. Of course, a late release discus is problematic for anybody over here on the track. So if you came upon this situation, what would you do? What instructions would you give people?
Don't throw.
I would definitely stop all running events or any running practice.
That's a good observation. You would need to do something to deal with the people on the track.
Scott,
Yeah,
Mark mentioned Shelby Sharp earlier, or you did. Shelby has a question every official should ask themselves in a situation like this or some of the others we're looking at. What are you going to say at your deposition?
indeed. Yeah.
Plead the fifth.
Well, one of the things you can do is to make sure that these people who are over here are back a bit, because this cage does have some netting over the top that will that should keep a discus from landing in this particular area. Notice the sector line. Okay, the right sector line. This is the same sector line. That's my coffee cup. Right below it, you see a little bit of the area that's telltale when something hits turf and those black pebbles come to the surface. That's where a discus landed. Who should not be over here? You see that? None of these people should be seated there.
Too many people milling around. You
Yeah.
can't have that many people that are unsuspecting and not watching milling around. They're in the risk zone. They're in the red and the yellow risk zone.
Yeah, very well stated. Yeah. I went over and told these people that they needed to move. And they were cooperative. I pointed out the cage and possibilities. Um, but as we know, when you deal with people, you have to be as diplomatic as you possibly can. So um, at this point, I would like to ask some people in the Pacific Northwest Association to talk about a situation that you came upon and how you dealt with it and what the result of that was. So that would be Ivars or Paul or Suzanne Keen. If you can talk about that, please.
Well, Scott, I've got one I can talk about.
Sure, Bob.
It didn't happen in Pacific Northwest though. Uh, Back in 2017, give or take, I know part of what I was doing was during 2017 because I was recovering from my knee surgery. I had volunteered before that to be an expert witness in a liability case in Omaha, Nebraska. State championship, and somebody got hit with a discus. And I was sent all the depositions from the people involved. I looked them over. In previous years, they had a big rectangular field, and they had been throwing the discus from the center of the short edge, which is probably a good location to be in. That year, they moved it to the corner of the field. And I had a picture of the cage taken from where the person was that got hit. And I look at the cage, I can see cage between me and the thrower. If I was standing there, I would assume I'm okay. The cage is between me and the ball and the discus. Not realizing the discus curves. This was down the left sector line. But they had, by moving to the corner, they had cut out a large portion of safe area on either side where people would be standing. They could be standing against up near a fence there. They'd be relatively safe when it was in the center of the rectangle, but not in the corner.
And
I
here we,
filed my report with the defense attorney, and they settled out of court.
I see. Interesting. Why were you asked, Bob, initially?
This was a high school event. I was on the high school rules committee at the time, and the question came up at one of our meetings. Would someone like to, be willing to try that? And, well, why not? It was probably that surgery was in February. So it's probably the 2016 meeting we had of the rules committee.
Well, you've had some personal involvement then with something that's moved into the realm of litigation.
Yep.
So Ivars and Paul, Suzanne, can you talk about that one situation with the throws? The low fence?
It's not
Yeah,
just the low fence. though.
Yeah, there's a few things. So this is and this is Paul and Suzanne Keen.
They're from the Pacific Northwest Association.
You start off.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it was an invite. I ran the discus. I hadn't seen that kind of venue before. It looked like a baseball backstop. And then at some point they extended arms for more protection that were lower. Essentially, discuses were flying all over the place. A woman with the baby stroller got out of the way in time. They put up flagging after I said, this is nuts. It was able to go into the track. And so I was just new enough at this. I kept going. And then when it was all done, Paul and I sat down. A nice letter went to the district AD. It went to the school AD. Who else did you?
Coaches, all the coaches.
All the coaches.
High school.
And at the end of the day, and I was advised to do that by other Pacific Northwest officials that had participated in different depositions. And it just flat out wasn't safe. And to make matters worse, the fencing between spectators and the throws area is just your common garden fence. It was like 4 feet, 5 feet tall. Anyway, they did modify it at some point, and all it is the same backstop style chain link, only they cantilevered about a 2-foot wide strip around the top like a lip. And there's nothing anyone can do because NFHS only says that the netting is recommended. I mean, we were pretty powerless. Paul's really hardcore. He won't work there again. I caved and I did the shot one time. That's how I know how they modified.
I thought there was that there was some response from the district that some positive response, but I'm mistaken about that.
Well, there was an initial response from the district AD, and he said he would look into it basically. And then Suzanne just described what changes they made, which were not sufficient. And then more recently, Bob Fry, who is the head coach at Emerald Ridge, said he was going to convene a meeting. And this is in light of the situation in Colorado, which I had forwarded to him, although he had actually seen it on his own. So he is convening some kind of meeting. I haven't heard the outcome of that yet, if they're going to be able to do anything.
Okay,
they just need to update their facility and modernize it. It's just not.
And you've informed them that you're not working their meets until
Right.
next. And that's
Correct.
one of the things that people can do, because if they value your help and you tell them that you are not going to help at a meet until something is done, that tends to get the attention of people a little bit more than if they don't know anything about you. Do we have anything in the chat that we want to focus on? Duke, you hear me?
Oh, I'm here. Sorry. What was the question?
Well, about the chat. Is there something that we need to be responsive to that's in the
Let's
chat?
see here. There's just a lot of comments.
Okay, so keep monitoring that, and we'll get back to you.
Okay.
This is in Miramar, Florida. The gentleman there nearer the camera is Bill Linhart, who is a retired Oregon State policeman, travels widely to different events. He and I have worked with Jesse Owens in Columbus, and he frequently goes back east to work meets. But we came upon a horrid cage here. As you can see, it's tall. It has, the makings of a good cage. But if you'll notice, this is one of the movable panels, and this is the other one. And what do you see that's missing?
Scott, we're not seeing the photo.
It's a nice,
You're not seeing this photo?
Yeah, we got it.
nice wings, but no
We
net.
we can see the photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the hammer ended up hitting this is not the track itself. This is adjacent to the track. But a hammer slammed down here. I think that's Phil Zoda right there. Phil Zoda.
Yes, it is.
So, do you know what they did to compensate or how they handled this situation? Does anybody know?
Yes, Scott, I was there with the U-20s. They took all the people out of the stands. They stopped the high jump and they threw with no netting on the cage doors and about 150 tie wraps in the rotten netting.
Yeah, and it was my recollection that they also moved the competition to the morning before anybody else showed up.
Yes,
Yeah,
they moved it
Scott,
the next day.
Scott, this is Nicole. I was actually the head for that event. I refused to send any officials out to officiate that day. Originally, the hammer was supposed to be at 12 o'clock noon. During practice, the hammers were bouncing on the track and going into the stands. And they decided to put the hammer at 8 o'clock the next morning. There actually are a lot of holes in the netting as well. You can't see too clearly. I have better pictures of it. But I refuse to have any official officiate that meet until either the time was adjusted or they adjusted the cage.
Good for you. They had a tiger there to deal with, and I'm glad that you are the person on the spot, Nicole. Can you send me some of those pictures that you have? I would love to see them.
Absolutely.
Very interesting to hear your perspective, Nicole.
Scott, I talked about this one of your other sessions, and I've had several incidences like this. And I've been a meet referee, I've been a throws referee, and I've been a head official. Anytime something like this happens, you've really got to talk to the meet referee or the throws referee and or the meet director, because they're the ones that ultimately are going to get sued first. And in retrospect, you always put stuff like this in writing. You put it in an email and you carve in as many people as would have jurisprudence over that situation. But and I've been a referee. I've deemed sectors unthrowable and actually canceled the event unless they could reschedule it. So I think the first move, you've just got to go to the head official and then the throws or meet referee and the meet director, because they're the ones that ultimately got to make that decision.
Thanks very much. Nicole, do you recollect who the throws official or referee was?
I do not, but that was a chaotic meet. It was a last minute kind of venue that it was selected for U20s. They wanted to move it to across the street, which the grass was overgrown. And a lot of officials ended up the sector lines. I think the javelin sector lines were like 7 meters off. And we all had to help each other out to verify the sectors. Each sector for like the shot put, the discus, hammer, and the javelin were completely off. So it wasn't, I don't think anybody was specifically at that time before this was all brought to the attention. I can't remember the referee, but I can look it up.
Well, it was an interesting meet for sure. As you indicated, it was last minute selection. We didn't know. And of course, people complain about not knowing when something's occurring and trying to get plane reservations. And Miramar is a poster child for that one. Duke, do you see anything in the chat to bring up?
Not yet.
All right. Now, this is a high school situation. Obviously, we've got a shot ring and fence. Got some good weeds growing there too. Could a shot overtake this fence?
I've seen it.
Yeah. What could you do? And Joe, you just were talking about this. What would be a reasonable move or suggestion, or what could you do if you found out about this in advance?
Well, your safety zone, your yellow and your red safety zone are literally where the fence is. You would almost have to make sure that you do not have any competition going on and or any practice or people milling around on that curve that could be hit. That's the first thing you do. You secure the area.
What happens if you found out about this a couple weeks before the competition?
Well, always if you have a technical referee, that helps. But if you don't, you ask for pictures. I did the D3s last year in Myrtle Beach, and I sent pictures to the meet director and asked him about, for example, bleachers that needed to be moved, and it was done. And anytime you can do preventive officiating before you get into the throes of competition, you're much better off. And pictures tell 1,000 words. If it's sent in an email, a good picture or even a video, walking with a phone, taking a video and panning across it will give that meet director and the planners something really good to go on as they try to make that a safe throwing area.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point about having something visual that makes the reality stand out a little bit more to people. Rory, do you have any comments about things that we've covered so far?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Rory Osborne, who's frequently picked to be head marshal at major events.
Sadly, but true. Yeah. Well, I don't know how far you're going with this, but one of the things I always like to comment about is we look at venues, which is obviously what we need to do. Is the judgment of the officials sometimes not with regard to the venue, but with regard to the event. And one of the most dangerous times, as you've heard me often say, is during warm-ups, where officials are not paying attention. They're talking to each other, they're looking at their clipboards, they're drifting about. We had an incident at Stanford 2 years ago. The hammer thrower threw it up over the back of the top of the cage, and it landed on the track up behind the area. How did that happen? Well, they were letting these guys do spins in front of the cage. You know, they weren't releasing it, but they were warming up doing spins, and slipped out of his hand. He threw it 180 degrees to where the sector was, and it landed where some little kids were going to run a small little race.
Wow.
So there's that. And just to be attend to things during practice times. You know, we had the official who was killed in Carson back in what was that, 4 or 5 or whatever that was, 6. And during practice sessions, and people were not attending to the ring and what was going on. It hit him in the temple. He was DOA, and those sorts of things. So,
well, you make a very good point, which is that some officials choose to make warm-up time downtime.
yes.
Let's look at the phone time. Well, put the damn thing away.
Yes.
Let's talk with our buddies time. Let's eat our sandwich time. All that is possible and pay attention to, but really, if you're driving along and you're talking, you're not doing either well. So pay attention during warm-ups. That is absolutely vital.
Warm-ups are just as important as the event itself, regulated. You know, at the Stanford incident that happened, I was up in the track, saw this hammer coming up toward these kids. And I went down there and I pulled all the athletes together. Why? Because the officials were yakking themselves out in the sector and in between. And I pulled the athletes together and told them, if I ever see that again, you will be disqualified from here. And if it continues, I'll stop the event. And then they all agreed, they all understood. And as I walked away, the officials then head of the event started coming over to see why I was there. And I just walked away from him because I was too upset that I would say something nasty to him for the fact that one of these little kids could have almost gotten killed because he wasn't paying attention. So there's that. There's the warm up issues and paying attention to, you know, those kinds of things like that. And I'm very biased because I am responsible on the field, as we all are, but I have my my main duty is in the United States here is to watch out that people don't get hurt. And not so much the World Athletics; they don't care, you know, if people they get sued. They're not going to get sued if a Kenyan runner gets hit with a discus. Kenya's not going to sue the World Athletics because they'd be cutting their own throats politically. But in this country, we sue. So I'm trying to keep people alive and well. And so I have a hypersensitivity to all that, and I'm biased. And that's all my preface of saying, were it up to me, I would get rid of the weight throw. I don't know why they have such a thing like that. It's the most dangerous thing that I've seen. It has been so difficult to officiate the weight throws indoors. They've gone through nets, over nets. They've hit various
Yeah,
things.
we're not going to be getting rid of those though.
We're the only country in the world that does it. It's not an official event. So that's my bias. And you wanted comments, those are my comments.
Well, one of the things that you brought up is about inattentive officiating during warm-ups, and I would characterize that as sloppiness. An official has no business at all being sloppy in performance of duties. One of the things that just drives me nuts is starters who pay absolutely no attention to what's going on with the hurdles. They start the race and they never pay any attention to whether the hurdles have been lined up on the track, properly set up, not touching each other. How can you possibly allow a race to occur when you haven't bothered taking one iota of interest in what's happening with the objects that are on the track? That is
May I say something on that one? May I say
yeah,
something?
yes.
What is the chief umpire supposed to be doing?
Well, I'm talking in this case about a meet where you don't have that. You're just a starter. And you know, any D3 meet basically that's during the season, you're you know, you're not going to have these people.
You have another issue, period. Rory has worked with me. He came in long after I started. I've been a marshal a long time. He gets to go to a lot of places. That's true. But the main thing you got is officials ignoring the basic safety of the electronics in these kids' ears, and they're trying to pay attention to everything else except what they're supposed to be doing. And you see that, you go there and you want to say something, they look, you know, marshal walk up, they say, you need to say something. No, as an official, anyone can speak up on safety. You don't have to wait for everybody else.
That's a very good point. A very good point. We're all supposed to help each other out.
Can I say something about Rory's comments about the Home Depot Center? I wasn't there. I was getting people from the airport, but I talked to the officials that were involved extensively about what happened. And the folks in the sector were looking at the ring. They were experienced throws officials and they were looking at the ring, but nobody was looking at the sector itself. And a retired official came into the sector and he was bending over and the kid threw the shot and the officials jumped out of the way and the guy was right behind him and it killed him. But my point is that you have to look at more than just the ring. As an official, you got to look at the ring, but in terms of overall safety, you have to watch everything.
Yeah, your antenna have to be out. You have to be alert.
Yeah.
You very much do.
Scott, this is Paul. Can I just make a real quick comment on some of the previous comments, particularly Randall's? I mean, a lot of it's spot on, and obviously we need to pay attention. However, having said that, I will note, and this is particularly true during high school meets, that very often, throws or sometimes even horizontals, other events, it's you. You've got one official and maybe a couple of kids helping you out. And during warm-ups, you are trying to do your best to pay attention, but you've got other athletes you're checking in, kids are asking you questions. there's a lot going on, and it's very, very difficult to manage even a warm-up period when you're the only official and there is a lot of other things to do. It's not always just not paying attention.
Yeah,
I just want
that's
to make
very
that
true.
comment.
That's very true. You have to be so very busy when you're working alone. Yeah, and I was not actually addressing that particular individual, but ones where there are opportunities for multiple people to talk and then not pay attention. Because I've seen that, experienced it, and yeah, it's something that we just need to avoid. This is a $200 million high school. They pushed dirt around for about a year to get this into position to actually start building. This is a ball field down below, and as you can see, there's quite a drop in elevation. This adjacent private property here is also quite a distance down. It does not appear to be as far down as this ball field. Well, this is a very fancy place, but look at this absurdity. They put in this pit right up here by this fence. And how this school handles this now is this is their triple jump pit. They have another one that they can use for long jump where there's more likelihood of people doing run-throughs. In this same facility, there is their baseball field. You can see the elevation drop. And I'm sorry about these lines. I don't know what I did. This is my wife standing by the fence. She's about 5.5 feet tall. So this fence is, we'll call it 6 feet. This seemed to be a wonderful place to build a shot sector. Who can tell of a problem that might occur with what it is you can see here?
You mean specifically like what's below the fence that a shot can go over as a foul and
Yeah, and
cause
then
some
talking
damage there?
about
The late
and then talking
throw,
about the area down there on the other side of the fence that's down below.
probably spectators down below.
It's much
How-
like the picture earlier of the track in close proximity to the danger zone. It's the same situation. It's too close to the landing zone of the shot. There's no room for error there.
None for error.
You
And
have
you'll
a
notice,
you have a
you
bigger
notice the
problem.
sidewalk that's down there.
You have a bigger problem. Your ring spotter. You have no room for that ring spotter to move.
No, yeah,
On the other
somebody,
one with the curved track, you have no place to put that right or left side spotter.
right.
And that's what you have to have there. And looking at the
Yeah.
width of your green spot on this one, it's not conducive to have anyone, period, sitting there watching the toes and watching the entry and exit of the circle.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. $190 million, and they built these areas that almost unusable. Okay, so same person relocated. This is about a 6 foot
Jeez.
fence.
Hey,
What's your
Gus.
guess for the drop here?
Oh, that
That's a
drop would kill
sidewalk right
someone.
there? No.
Well, I had I'd done what Mark had suggested and others have suggested. I wrote a letter to the school board, to the superintendent, the principal, the head of Oregon State Activities Association. I thought that was sufficient. And I'll be darned if they didn't do this. Now, that's not every place is going to be able to afford to do that. But they listened. They listened. And one of the things that I mentioned in the letter was you're looking at the possibility of death. And I was very gratified to see that they had done what they did here. That's quite remarkable. You still have problems with people marking in the sector, but that's a minor thing. We can take that. This is in Albuquerque. Any of you work throws in Albuquerque?
Yes.
I put this series of yellow tape there.
This is the weight throw.
Yeah, weight and shot.
Yeah,
Also,
I had to,
set up shot.
I had to recruit people from out of the stands to help. Took 9 of us to adjudicate this. It hit the stands. It went through the nets. It went over the nets. It bounced at the far end where the laser was set up.
Are you talking about your favorite implement, Roy, the
Yes,
weight?
weight throw.
Yes.
It's just, it was
Same thing
incredibly
in
dangerous.
same thing in 2023 with the indoor championship. We
Yeah.
had they were having practice and they were sailing over the nets and there was no one on the walkway that's on the right side of or the left side of the sector there.
Yeah.
It was
You're
ridiculous.
talking about, Carolyn, the left side of this photo.
The right side of the photo.
The right side of the photo, but the left side of the sector if you're
Oh,
if you're in
okay.
the ring.
This was the fans. This was the fans area that they walked. They walked along this area to get around, and so you had to put 2 people here. Well, and I say here. I'm doing it with the arrow in my thing.
Yeah.
You had to put 2 people near this where
That's
you
what
see
Mom
the area here, and then you have to put 2 people at the far end to stop all of the traffic each time someone got into the ring. So that was 4 people right there. You needed just to stop the people walking past because the weight would go over or through the net. And on this side, the near us here, there was where the metal stands where it already hit and put it and crushed the first row. So we had to push people out of that area. And then where they were entering, we had a problem where the athletes were entering the net. And then where the coaches were, was a problem. It was just a problem all around. At the far end where the weight is landing and rolls, there are people, there's traffic that goes through there, and the laser is set up there. So we had to have people there as well. There's not enough room there. It should not be held in that venue.
Hey, Rory.
Yeah.
Can you do us all a favor? Your
Video.
no, the cursor that you're
Oh.
using is a small black little tiny little icon that's hard to follow on these screens. Can you make it?
That's not Rory.
That's not me.
No, that's Scott.
Whoever that is that's in charge of this screen.
If I knew how, I'd do it. If I knew how, I'd do it. So this is one of the things that Carolyn and Rory was talking about was the low netting, the low netting. That's my bungee cord right there, my bungee cord. So I got a ladder and I went up there and I have a carabiner here and a carabiner there to try to take care of that a little bit more. Now, I know there are people who frown on that, who say that should just be meat management who do that. And that's fine if you've got people from meat management who are doing it, who are actually making the alterations. But in the absence of that, what do? Be satisfied with what the lousy situation, or do you try to improve on it? I think one of the things that is mentioned when you hear the name Shelby Sharp is, what did you notice? What did you do about it? If you do something to try to mitigate the situation, I belong to the school of thought that that's better than nothing.
One of the issues that we keep overlooking, as you go to these venues now, someone donates money and they tell the people or the school what they want built. They never go out and get a group of track officials to look it over and to give input. I know of one large school, I live in Houston, one large school, they had an AD, and the football took over the track, and they built an indoor track. And they asked the head coach, world famous head coach, asked him to leave the meeting twice because he was trying to put input in. And this is what you run into when you are an official. These places like this, they bid on these track meets for money, but they don't want to improve or to build anything that's going to keep them, keep the people safe. They will rather pay, maybe if they pray that someone don't get hurt. We all pray that no one get hurt. But it's the idea of what they are building and what they're bidding on and what they want to bring into their town. All the people come into their town and they're making a lot of money, but they do not want to put anything else into building a facility that's proper.
Yeah, there's something we can talk about that is based upon what you just gotten through saying that's coming up here. This is an interesting thing. I'll just kind of go through this a little bit. This facility is as rough hewn as you can get, obviously. But we have indicated to the people who run this or own this that there's not going to be any USATF officiating occurring at this place until the netting is improved. It needs to be brought up to the top of the posts. The gaps need to be closed up. And if that's not done, nobody's going to be officiating there. And I think we've got their attention because they're not going to be able to have any competition unless that occurs. This is a high school facility. The poles are set up perfectly fine for high school specification. But I was asked to look this over by the head of OSAA, that's Oregon State Schools, Activities Association, Director Brad Garrett, who was on the Rules Committee at one point, and he asked if the cage is safe. Well, you'll notice how this netting is concave here. You'll notice how it's straight here. But those of you who have done throws, you know that the discus is not released from the center of the circle. You know that the discus is likely to be positioned to the outside of the circle when the throw actually occurs.
May I ask you a question about this picture?
Sure.
The blue lines, what are the blue lines? That's probably the sector lines?
Those are sector. These are old sector. They didn't get rid of them entirely. The darker or the brighter blue ones are the sector lines. Well, I communicated to the AD, principal, coach, my thoughts on the matter, and the red line is intended to show the angle of release of a discus in this manner over here. And the idea is that this is the danger zone, this entire thing here. And remember, we were talking about of 55 or 60 degree angle out for your netting. That is basically to this soccer standard. But as you can see, this is almost a 90-degree danger zone due to the opening of this discus cage and how close the poles are to the circle itself.
Got almost all high school cages that athletic directors purchase are too short, short in relation to the circle. They're not deep enough out into the sector. As officials, we're all going to encounter this if we do high school meets, and it's the equipment that's available from MF and these other suppliers. They do not have panels, but they sell a quote unquote high school regulation cage, and it's almost never deep enough. and also when you have a throwing sector in the oval, it presents a new myriad of issues for movement in and around the circle with other athletes. And we've all just got to be diligent talking to the ADs, talking to the principals, explaining the liability. And then we got to mitigate it by not letting people out there or scheduling that event when there aren't people out there. And I do a lot of high school. I do the Virginia State High School Championships, and we have this ongoing. And even a collegiate facility that's inside of the oval, you've still got quite a few problems. And your first move is always to have streamers and safety zones clearly marked out there into the sector, not hurdles. You know, you need colorful streamers that people can visually see out there in the sector off to the side.
Good point. Yeah. And it's something that is common to come upon, and it's incumbent upon us to communicate our concerns to people who can supply things that, as you mentioned, can delineate, better mark danger zones. Duke, this is one that Duke has, where the circle has been set up. Doesn't appear to be much of a cage that is dedicated to the throwing sector. But how about this? And over here is a baseball field where people can get hit. Not much to be done here except to hold this one. There's nobody around, no baseball game. But what do you do with your athletes?
And Scott,
Yeah,
this kind of what I was talking about earlier with that thing in Omaha. This is in the corner, and there's no room down either sector line for anybody.
yeah,
And also, if you notice, down the fence line is a set of nice aluminum bleachers.
I was just getting ready to say that too. It's right there next to the poles, straight a set
Kind
of
of hard to
bleachers.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one where you just not hold the competition if there are people around. But again, where do you put the athletes? Duke, are they're standing on this side of the fence? Is that what they're doing?
They haven't used it in a while. They're looking at getting a temporary or I'm not sure what the school's going to do. If they need to get a fence up, a safety fence up around that area.
That looks like a soccer field, and that's probably a practice ring.
It's a combination soccer and the throwing area. So this one here, they've got the cones up. Isn't that enough just for practice?
No.
And we've got there's a baseball fence to the left and then open field soccer straight down the middle.
Yeah.
So I guess you can say the cones up is enough. So you're practicing not to break your ankle in all those holes that are all around.
Absolutely. So
yeah, that's pretty remarkable facility.
This is a picture of a discus thrower. This is in Jamaica.
So his discus left-handed thrower.
Yeah. And what do you notice about this picture?
No netting.
I have videos too of actual throws. But yeah, there's absolutely no netting at all, no protection. And then here we're talking about shot put. I've got the arrow where the shot, you can see the shot put, and those wonderful photographers that are
sitting on the ground.
Yeah.
And this one, this one seems to be far enough out. You often see photographers that shot rings that are as close as that or closer.
Yeah, so definitely have to be mindful of where media is among many other things.
Yeah, left-handed thrower who over-rotated.
So
This
on
is
the
down in Albuquerque.
on your last slide there, those two fellows should be standing. They shouldn't be kneeling down on the,
Shouldn't be kneeling or seated
Yeah.
on their tushes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is in Albuquerque. This was Mountain West. Of concern are these pieces of wood sticking up. Rory, I don't know how it was in Carolyn when you were there. I came upon this in my capacity as marshal before I was switched to throws, and I thought, oh, this can't be, because if you get off the pad, there's a very good chance that you would slice open your calf muscle.
yeah.
So I
Agreed.
went over to the hotel that we were staying at and borrowed a blanket.
Well, yeah, right.
Now, laugh all you want, Roy Osborne, but come on, the wood's covered up, isn't it?
Yeah, you can bury your head in the sand if you want.
Well,
It was better than nothing. Thank you, Scott.
That-
Thanks for doing that.
better than nothing.
That's right.
This
Rory,
is a
what,
situation in a cross-country course where there was this post. The pole right here holding the flagging was a little closer to this drain pipe. And so reposition the post and use some tape to try to draw people's attention to the post to try to make it a little safer. This is a place where there had been I'm not quite sure what was here, but these flanges are obviously a problem. And they chose to deal with that by putting a cone over it. Well, a cone draws your attention to it, but what would be better?
Was it a possible poll for camera?
Wind
I
gauge.
don't think it was, Roy.
Wind gauge.
Wind gauge could be.
Well, you could get a sandbag, couldn't you? And put a
Yeah.
sandbag on that.
Yeah.
That would be cheap, and it would be a way to
Aren't you,
take care of it.
Scott, you should have brought a pillow from your hotel.
There you go, Roy. So this sort of thing you'll come upon quite a bit. What can you do when you see something like this?
Where is it?
I'm not going to say where it is. But we have now a couple inches of pipe sticking up out of the ground. So the grounds crew obviously didn't think it was important to do anything about this thing. So what could you do here?
Scott, I don't think the question is what location, but where in the aspect of the event.
Yes.
Oh, I get you.
Shot,
I get you.
biscuit, like yeah.
This
Thank
is in
you.
an area adjacent to a throws area. So there are some shot rings off to the left, and you know, some fence that was removed and this thing left.
Cone
Is
the
it
pipe.
possible you could put a cone on top of that?
Yeah, if you don't have anything else, you would want to put a cone, wouldn't you?
Then fill the hole with dirt.
Yeah, but you might take out of your bag your 5-pound maul that you have just for occasions like this and pound the heck out of that thing down into the ground. No, I don't think you'd want to necessarily do that, but you'd want to try to do something to draw people's attention to that. This is a Eastern Washington. There was as you can see, the steeplechase pit covers have been taken out and all, but they've been set right here next to the track. With these things are heavy, and that's a steel corner there. This is Paul Bodenshot, good friend Paul Bodenshot. So what he and I did was, what do you think?
Moved it.
We just moved these guys, picked them all up and brought them over here well out of the way of the steeplechase. Didn't care what anybody thought about it. Just got it the heck out. This is also in Washington. This is the back of a post. Look at this. They've got a drainage ditch that's right by this track. Here's a metal grid that's intended to enable people to go from a gate here to the inside. And there's one down here just by this green. But or maybe you don't see that. But this is nice to have, but somebody can slam into that. Certainly somebody can slam into this thing. This is a hurdle mark. Blue is for boys, men's hurdles. It's just crazy. So, do you guys recognize what this thing is? This black thing?
Break the line for the 800.
On this post.
Padding for the post, but it's so minimal that you'll still feel the post.
You'll still feel the post, yeah. But this is separable foam that you can get from like Ace Hardware. And so I brought that down and put it on this post, thinking that if somebody slams into it, at least they'll have some kind of protection. This is all over the place, these electronic boxes. It's crazy. Look at this steeplechase pit. So what do you do here? What possibly can you do?
Scott, in a court of law, those immovable objects will be undefendable in a court of law. They are high risk. It doesn't matter whether it's a steeplechase barrier, whether it's a pole, an electric box. They are extremely dangerous and undefendable because they're unmoving. They do not give whatsoever. And you see this a lot. You see, especially even in high school, but these aren't high schools. So these are nice facilities, but an unmovable object is your enemy as far as safety goes.
So at this point, you would what? Refuse to work the meat?
Put water in it.
That's a good question.
I don't know how many of us are prepared to do that. To be
I
frank
know.
with you. So there you're talking about that. Here's the other side of that immovable object. But these are the long jump pit covers. And so we thought that maybe it would be reasonable to try to lessen the drop off of the steeplechase.
That end of that hurdle will sure hurt.
Sure would.
A lot of times an AD will have access to like old PE mats or real thin gymnastics mats.
Yeah.
And that would be something to try to handle before or, soon enough ahead of time to put matting or any kind of a soft like you did on those poles. That pole picture, you had poles downrange that had that same foam on them.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, back up 2 pictures. Well, 3 now. Next one, that one. Is that barrier encroaching in lane 1?
No,
And
Bob.
I think I know which track this is.
It looks as though it is. It's basically over the edge of that pit, that corner.
It does. If it were legal, it's not legal because it doesn't extend past the edge of the water jump itself. If it were legal, it would be into lane 1.
Yeah. You recognize the place at all, Bob?
Oh, I know where it is. They don't. That track's gone, I think now.
It is. Duke, what do you got here?
Well, this sure seems like a safe long jump area because it has all of the cones around the outside.
We're talking about usage of cones. Yeah. Somebody finding a little bit more sand too.
Yeah, we did not use that pit. I did not allow it.
Yeah. This is an indoor pit in which I was doing some inspection, and you'll notice that my fingers are flanking a part of a flange. And this was intended to be a covered by some sort of post or so, but it had disappeared and these flanges were exposed. So went down to Home Depot and got a post and some of that foam that you saw and covered this area to make it safer for the jumpers. Yeah, might have been half-assed, but it was better than nothing. And then this one right here, I had that in another Zoom, and you just wouldn't want to hold any competition whatsoever. You just say, we're done. We're not doing this. This place, very fortunately, has had a rebuild of the track and some new equipment. I'm very happy for them.
This here is a picture where they didn't have the right pole vault parts. So they have the gill pit, but they had a UCS side section where the standard is at. And then they just used looks like a gymnastics mat in the middle. So.
Yeah, well, there was some thought given to some degree of safety, but that could present some problems for people. Okay, here's what I was referring to earlier. You talk about a diamond setting. Well, there you go. You talk about some difficulties with throws being held in the oval. Well, this is it in spades right here. What do people know about issues with throws and other field events and track events at Hayward Field?
Constant source of problems.
I can tell you,
Where
Scott,
do we begin?
Specify one, Rory.
I was working at I think it was a combined U20 and senior national championships, and I was tech manager. But that was early on in the tech management. All I was dealing with was field events. So I was free, and so I volunteered to marshal. I think I was working with Shelby. I don't know if it was Rory or Shelby, but I was assigned to the long jump area, roughly where that netting is. I think we're jumping from left to right. So the athletes were down in roughly where that placement of the netting picture is. This is
Bob, before you go on, there's no such netting.
There's no netting.
Is what you're referring to.
Yeah, I was there to watch the javelin. And if the javelin should get loose toward the athletes in the long jump, I was to make sure they moved. That was my job. Watch the javelin to protect the long jumpers because they were in the way of a errant javelin coming down that direction.
Okay, speaking of javelin, I want you all to notice this area right here. See this darker area of the grass parallel to the runway? This is called the west runway. And then, of course, that's the east runway. You see this box right here. You're going to see this box in another photo. There's no netting here at all. Bob was talking about an errant javelin throw. The area over here you're going to see come into play. This is the discus cage, and this has not changed. Basically, when the facility was rebuilt, everything was kind of back to where it had been, give or take a little bit of difference. This area over here, Rory, can you talk about this area where the north long jump pits are?
Well, typically they will jump north to south, the south being on the right-hand side there and near the finish line.
In this direction.
Yeah. So near the finish line down there, which creates its own problems of all kinds of congestion in that area. But The benches and such where the athletes are down on the north side, which is to our left. And
They're
just
usually about here.
yeah, somewhere in there. And discuses will routinely be thrown that either curve or thrown poorly into that area, into the pit area. That's a pit area, obviously, an alternative pit area, which sometimes used when the wind changes or something, but mostly it goes the other way. But they'll go through the athlete area. Athletes have been hit. It goes across the track during races. It's slammed up against the, right there where your arrow is, it's slammed up against the stands. The stands are at ground level, and there's a little, a little, what do you want to call it, Scott? Some barrier right there protecting the stands, but it's hit the stands where people are sitting in the front row. It's, there is a small, maybe a couple of feet tall, foot and a half, something like that. Black
I'll show
metal.
that. I'll show that.
Little chain
Yeah.
link, little chain link fence.
Yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
chain link that runs, well, used to run from,
Here's the edge of the fence is here,
yeah,
and it goes around
to the other,
here
yeah.
to about here.
So
Here.
it had a gap under it, so the discus
There
is,
is a gap under the new fence.
so it would go under the fence.
I picked up a discus right here.
Yeah, and for a number of years, I asked, could they please redo that fence so that it came all the way down to the ground. They finally did that, and then tore the stadium down. And when they rebuilt it, the fence is back up again. So they're now, the gap has returned.
So what Rory's referring to is this. These people are in the line of fire. If there are people here, they also are in the line of fire, but not as much as these people.
Right.
People on the track can get hit by a discus.
Umpires with their backs.
I have seen a discus land in this pit, splashing sand so that in the sun back of it, it looked like water droplets. But it was that's about 220 feet right there. Starters set up here because this is the start of the 100. This is the start of the 110s.
Umpires have their backs there to the where the flight of the discus.
So this is what Rory was talking about. This thing right here is somebody's idea of a good time. But as Rory knows, and Carolyn knows in particular, discuses come here on the fly and they slam down into this area. You will have occasional discuses that are released early that skip on the ground, but most of the ones that are released early, in my experience, are ones that are raining down from the heavens.
And they'll also hit in front of that barrier, bounce over and skip. That barrier is not there permanently and was not there historically. We asked for some kind of barrier to put up, so they put this up. They put some of those cattle gate things, fencing up with some wood on it one time, and they would hit that, but they would also fly over it. Down at the far end down there that you can see, it didn't go that far down, and didn't even come down as near us here as far. So they put some intermediate things in there. I've been told, because I've been in conference with some folks there, Hayward, that they've bought a netting, temporary netting that they're going to try to put up.
You have been told this?
I've been told that by Josh, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Strike me dead.
Well, we can do that.
Be darned.
If you want to do that, get out in the javelin or on the other side.
Yeah, speaking of which, Justin Kuo here in Phil Zoda laying down sector tape. Guess what that's crossing?
Yeah, right.
Is that one thing I told you I was going to refer to, that area where the speakers, but.
And that's that little fence out there. Well, not that one.
And here they
no,
borrowed
the black fence in the prior, there's your black fence out there. It has a gap under it.
Has a gap. I picked up the discus over there by the flowers.
Right.
Okay, now this is a good neighbor fence. Look at
Yeah.
that. Doesn't that look nice? Isn't
Yeah.
that wonderful?
Do you have that picture of the javelin stuck in it?
Well, just a minute here. You
All right.
see all these people having a good time here, not really worrying about imminent death. Well, you see, Robert, this area of the fence? Here's what made it.
Yeah.
Look at the proximity of these people.
And it's gone farther than
Why
that.
would you ever allow a situation to occur where you know this can happen? All right, now we were talking about officials. There's not a lot of people who want to cut their throats and not be invited to officiate at Hayward. Uh, the complaint factor tends to get lessened.
So
That's
the
not true.
javelins.
That's
Okay,
not true at all. And this is Yolanda Moore. We complain about that constantly.
Yes,
We
true.
complain about it constantly because we've had in the middle with somebody on the runway, we've had the discus land right there.
Yeah.
We complain about it all the time.
Yeah.
Complaining has done us no good.
Right.
Yeah. And the javelin has actually landed on that runway that you see on the other side of the fence there. And there is where the pit is. If you could show Hayward, can you go back to the Hayward aerial?
Oh, I've got the wrong one. Let me see here. The
Aerial view of it.
aerial of Hayward.
Yeah.
Yeah, we lost
Got it.
the slides.
There we go.
There you go, right there. So the runway, as you say, the closest to the javelin sector is the west runway, and the pit there, as Yolanda will tell you, there are chairs right there that the where one of the looks like almost a little arrow there. Well, yeah, and there are chairs for putting they put the bar back up and all that sort of thing. So there are a couple of chairs there, and that little white picket fence will be on the other side sometimes of those people. So, and javelins have been thrown over there in that area. I'm trying to remember who was in the chair, who got up last year and left the chair because they were finished. And shortly after he left, it landed in that chair.
It was Bill Kelly.
Bill Kelly, that's right. Bill Kelly was helping out. And because of that picket fence and because of the pit, you can be over there as a marshal and you can try to warn people. As I tell people, we don't have Roman shields. We can't stop it. We can talk ahead of time. We can plan ahead of time. We can have keywords that we yell or say, and that means don't look up, just go. But they can't go forward because the pit's there. They can't go back because the picket fence is there. The left person can't go to the right because there's a chair there. The right person can't go to the left because there's somebody in a chair there. It's highly problematic and unsafe, to say the least.
Well, if you were at a concert somewhere and you were told that your seats are positioned on an area where there's been a lot of rusting and the floor might give out at any particular moment while you're sitting there watching your concert, you probably wouldn't want those seats. And in effect, that's what we are asking of these athletes who are at the pole vault and at the long jump, triple jump. Don't pay any attention to that stuff that's in the air raining down on you. Why should those athletes have to have their attention taken away from what they're doing to worry about their safety? Why, this is just nuts. And so Rich Shorenstein, whom virtually everybody on this Zoom knows, he had enough and he wrote a real superb letter to a lot of people. You see Max Siegel here, CEO of USATF, Vin Lanana, the former president, with Kurt Clausen taking his position. You see a variety of people here who are emailed. The athletic director of U of O, the president of U of O. He made sure to CC all kinds of people. I am sending this message to make you aware of the dangers with track and field competitions at Hayward Field on the University of Oregon campus. Hayward Field is a superb facility, but significant danger exists when conducting discus and javelin competitions. To set the stage, there are 2 horizontal jumps runways on the west side and 2 pole vault on the east side, javelin discus sectors on between. One might think implements thrown by elite athletes would rarely land outside the prescribed sector. However, implements occasionally land very close to or on runways. The photo below depicts the result of a javelin striking a fence adjacent, and you've just seen that. The following are a few instances just this season. 24 NCAA Division I meet. I stood between 2 pole vault runways and a javelin landed right beside the inner runway, 8 to 10 feet from me. At the same NCAA meet, an official was seated beside the inner pole vault pit. 20 to 25 minutes after the conclusion of the event, a javelin landed precisely where he had been seated. And was that Bill Kelly?
Yeah.
With his back to the sector. He would
Yes.
have had
Yep.
no reasonable escape route, as Rory was talking about. At the same NCAA meet, the head marshal, Rory, positioned at the horizontal venue, observed a discus sail just below the face of an athlete who had been kneeling. And Rory had said, had the person's head been higher, he would have been struck in the temple. At the 2004 Olympic trials, there were 3 very close calls involving a discus in the horizontal jumps runway, etc. So he delineates these things. It's not a matter of whether a serious accident or a death may occur at Hayward. It's a matter of when. I ask you to think about the following. Imagine the horror of an athlete or an official as they are impaled by the grief of the family, the guilt of the athlete, the publicity of serious injury, lawsuits dealing with this. Now imagine yourself answering questions posed by attorneys at a trial. Why, after receiving written notice of extreme risk of throwing events, did you fail to take reasonable and simple steps to avoid this tragic accident? So, what can and should be done to eliminate or mitigate risks? This is a brilliant letter. The first action is indeed simple. Adjust the competition schedule, etc. Yes, television considerations often dictate schedules, and yes, Olympic trial schedules purposefully mirror those of the Olympics, but do these considerations outweigh valid safety concerns? I am a US ATF master level official with over 35 years of experience, etc. Then you get down here and you say, and you read, many officials have commented about the problems, but all to no avail. Regrettably, I've not raised a red flag and gone to top executives in the past. And shame on me for not doing so. If this communication now puts me on a not welcome list, so be it. But with risk as great as it is, I cannot remain silent. And I would suggest to you that if there indeed is netting that will be put up at Hayward, that Mr. Rich Shorenstein is going to be very much one to consider as a person responsible for that.
It was actually more vociferous than that in its original format.
It was. It was.
Hey, Scott, this is Paul. I just reading through that. And a couple things. One is for elite level competitions, Olympic trials, NCAAs and stuff. It seems to me like you would be able to mitigate a lot of that with scheduling, at least potentially. However, there's other events. I'd just point to JOs as one. I mean, it's just with all the age groups and stuff, you're going all the time. constantly, and it'd be very difficult to do much with scheduling in that case. Has any thought, or do they
Yes.
given the scheduling?
Yes. Yes. The
And
problem.
then the other thing, of course, is you can't do anything
Oh,
about the
just a minute,
track.
Paul.
The track's going
Just a
all the
minute,
time.
Paul. Paul, just a minute. Somebody who answered yes, go ahead.
Yes. Yes,
Tell
it
them
has
how.
been looked at, and that's part, it's actually more difficult to change than the JOs. JOs is just kind of a circus, you know, and such like that, but you can make changes there. The problem is television, number one. They want things in certain time, certain place, all of that. And the scheduling has been fixed for all of this for some time. And it's the first thing everybody asks for, change the schedule. And it's the last thing that they do. They try to find every workaround around it because they want the schedule that way because of various things like the combined events happening at the same time as this and that, and you know, consecutive days and all of that sort of thing, and all of the prelims and all of that sort of stuff. So ironically, when you get to the higher levels, it's more difficult to change the scheduling than.
Well, the events of the meet are compressed.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
meets are not as long as they used to be, and so they're putting a lot of things in a very in a reduced period of
Yeah,
time.
it's going to compressed is what it is. So
And who does not want to see Val Allman throw, or Ryan Krauser, or any of the top disc or javelin throwers? They're going to want to see them. So the
so
decision
they try to do
put
workarounds.
barriers in is very much a positive move, and I certainly hope that.
Yeah,
And
we'll see how that works out and all that. So they do they try to do workarounds rather than change the schedules. Change the schedule, unbelievably, is sort of the last thing that seems to be considered to be able to change. And you know, consequently, you're doing all these you know, bending over backwards to try to create other situations. Problem with Hayward, you know, is that they only had a certain footprint that they could work within. And so instead of having the pole vault and the long jumps outside the you know, to the outside of the track, they're on the inside, and it creates more of a problem.
yeah, the Hammer facility being on the outside is wonderful.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of attention paid to any kind of overlap of the top part of the net with the bottom, so that the hammer cannot find its way down through that. They've done a very, very good job with that sort of thing.
So
I think
then
the important thing here with Rich's letter is that he put into writing what he had been feeling, and he involved a lot of people who need to hear it.
yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
I've sitting here and listened to you all. My name is Keith Marshall. I'm new to the game. I just need to know all the things that you just said about this play.
Somebody appears to have a radio on in the background.
I think Phil.
Please
That's
turn
I
that
think
on.
that's Phil.
Okay.
He's got
Mr.
earphones on.
Mr. Marshall, you've muted yourself, Mr. Marshall. You're still talking, but you've muted yourself, so we can no longer hear you.
I'm here.
Keith,
Your
That's
marshal
not
is here.
working.
No, he's here, but he muted himself, so then we were no longer able to hear him.
Okay, I said
there you go.
continue to go out and participate and officiate this meet, knowing that you have all of these problems. And when the people sue, your name will be on the top of the list due to the fact that you are the official in charge, and you have documented, they have documenting text right now that you're saying, hey, there's a problem. We know it's a problem. We brought it to our attention, and we continue to go out there and supervise it.
We try to minimize. We trying to minimize people getting hurt. The other thing is, if we go to trial, because of that, oops, we lost you there in the picture. I assume you're still there. If we go to trial, probably I'll be on the prosecuting attorney's side because I have documented it. I've made many statements. We've had meetings and all of that, and I've tried to get changes made. And we are getting small change. We have got small changes made and all that, and working toward more. But we try to minimize it. If it's too unsafe, then I have certainly done what some others have done, and I've said I won't do this, and I've done that.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah. Some of these things are very tough.
I have a
But
question.
You mentioned
Is there
the
any
other,
what's wrong with, since you started out saying that the facility was superb, and then like he said, there's so many issues, why not go to another location?
Phil Knight.
Yeah, right. Phil Knight for one, and
Does he know of
because
these
you have to
issues?
find another venue in this country that will hold those higher events, like
There
World
are other
Championships,
facilities.
like Olympic trials, and all of that.
There are other facilities available in the United States.
Well, there's facilities, but you also have to be able to handle certain level of crowds and fans, and one that's the television is happy to work in, and all of that. And
I
all the
don't know
politics.
quite how to answer that, except to say that there are monetary demands that various facilities are going to find it impossible to meet. And it just happens to be that way. I very much sympathize with what you're saying. If there are problems with this venue, then why not go to some other venue? But there are a lot of factors that are brought into play.
They have to bid on it.
Yeah.
Right? They have to bid on it. You have to find places that are willing to put up the money that if they don't make that money back, they lose that money.
Yeah.
That's been a resounding issue, especially amongst Junior Olympics,
Yeah.
with the amount of money that you have to put forward. And now a lot of organizations that are offering to be the LOC in turn loses money.
Yeah.
What's the guarantee? What's the draw? Why would somebody want to go ahead and say, here's my earnest money? I know I won't see any of it back, but
yeah,
and lose even more than what they put up.
Absolutely.
So safety, we have a variety of aspects that dovetail together to make something a little safer. Just incumbent upon all of us to be aware of where we are and what maybe we can communicate to people to help with the situation. And so we'll have some final questions, comments here, and then we'll go ahead and end our session for tonight. Go ahead, Kirk.
Okay. My biggest takeaway is for the officials coordinators responsible for each venue that we work to make sure that they have the proper equipment to handle each event, whether it be from throws to verticals to horizontals, the track itself. It's mandatory. The beginning of the season, that has to be done. And each officials coordinator that works each event specifically has to get there early enough to be able to do a walk around. It's like, is there equipment that they were proposed to supply? Is it available? What does that matter? Obviously it does. It affects every one of us. It's a legal issue and we have to protect ourselves.
So
I don't want to stand up and,
a point about if possible, check out a venue in advance, see what there is to see, make a determination of what is needed for that particular place. That's a very fine suggestion. Yes.
It's a physical mandatory walkthrough of each facility. It can't be a picture sent of a facility. I mean, just like looking at your icon and arrows pointing around the screen, I can't see what you're talking about. It's too small a screen.
Right, it's 3 dimension. I
Yeah, you got to be
witnessed,
there. I mean,
you
if
have to
you're
be there.
responsible for that school and you're going to be there working it, you better taste it.
Good point. Anybody else with a comment?
One more question.
That even holds true for venues you're familiar with. Randall will tell you to say, even if you're in the same stadium that you've worked before, we always do. We walk around, check it out, make
Yeah.
sure, see if there are changes or problems that have come up.
I worked under Shelby for 20 years. I was his right hand. I supervised and I do everything. But I think Scott brought it up in that letter. As soon as you speak up, your name start getting skipped, and they start putting people in place that will bow down and smell the roses per se. And this is what's going on with the officials with where we are with USA Track and Field. They put people where if nobody gonna speak up, I speak up. And if you all know me, y'all been around Texas, you know who I am. I don't play. I believe in safety out there. So, but that one thing I'll say, they put people in place that don't want to say anything.
Well, I think your comment addresses the elephant in the room in that case, you know.
3 elephants in the room.
'Cause it does take you realize that you're going to be taking a chance by speaking out and by speaking up. But what's the alternative, really?
Well, one thing is what you said also, the TV, we have that at the Texas Relays. And they told me to move my marshal because they got a mic there. I told them, you move your mic. My marshal's going to be there. He's going to watch that sector line. But other people cower to that. They don't know how to stage and put a marshal, or they don't want the marshals in the facility because that's what we do. If you work around me, you will learn how to look around and see this stuff. And as Rory said, when we go into Texas, A&M, any place right there, San Antonio, we do early in the morning walk and see what could be a problem, as Mr. Kirk brought up. Walk and see what could be a problem and address it. Speak up. Because if you don't say something, you're just as guilty. And as the safe sports say, if you see something, say something. And in a matter of what we're talking about safety. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Very well said. Anybody else?
Hi, Scott. I'd like to say that the best thing that I've learned about safety is the word no, thank you, and no. And that safety is most important in those times when I have not said no, I've regretted it, and it's not been a good thing. And I've been with Rory in that situation. And no means no. Sticking to no means no. And it's a very hard thing to do, but keeping things safe and is more important than anything. That's about all I got about that one.
Well, you are a person who has demonstrated a very important characteristic, which is the courage to speak up and to speak what you feel needs to be said. Good enough, Corey.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you.
Anybody else? Anybody else here?
I want to underline some, theme of what Randall's talking about here, that the issues oftentimes for us is doing marshaling, I'll just speak for that, not the other folks, is that we hear a lot about safety comes first, and we hear that at our meetings and all of that. But in fact, what happens is it doesn't often come first. And we're asked to move, we're asked to have schedules that set up dangerous situations, we're asked to participate in venues that are dangerous and all of that. So it's up to us to make safety first, because there's a lot of platitude oftentimes about it. But we have to stand up and make it first, because it's not going to happen by itself.
Easy to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the proof is in the action. Yeah. Well, everybody, I've enjoyed the session a bit, very much. I hope you have also. Duke, were we able to monitor this chat? I'm so terrible at that.
There's just a lot of positive comments and thank yous. We've probably lost about, I don't know, about 60 people since we started.
Yeah, we had about 300 at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Gratified to see that there were that many people who had come on.
There is one question. Does anyone keep a master list of facilities? And it says, and what is needed. This was from Clint Morrison.
Oh, Oregon official. That's interesting. How about any of you? Do you keep record of things, photos, things, anything along those lines? Yeah. I do that in order to be able to have photos for things like this, and you know, just to have a record if there are things that occur at a facility for which I brought to the attention, you know, concerns. Who knows? As Rory had indicated, could be called to testify, and if you've made somebody aware of something and they haven't acted upon it, it's not going to work in their favor too well. But I think it's a good idea to keep a record of things along those lines, and it'll be very useful for people to know about what your observations are. Okay, everybody, thanks.
I have
very
one
much for
comment.
being part of this. Do appreciate you being on. Take care.
Thank you.
Scott, somebody said they had a comment.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, my comment is that currently, as officials, we have to be safe sport compliant. Maybe we need to have where facilities have some sort of level of compliancy to be able to host the event. If we need to be compliant to work the event, the facility should have a safety compliant to host the meet.
Money talks, BS walks.
Well, there are, in the best practices, there is a section for safety where it talks about venue preparation and such. And I'm not sure how many people in charge of a facility are aware of this sort of thing. So in my association, I'm going to take up your suggestion and make sure that ADs or the Oregon Schools Activities Association is aware of this and ask them to send this out to different schools.
And even if not for the entire venue, specific event sites, in the sense that everything at this venue might be good except the long jump pit. So it's like, okay, we can do everything else except long jump because that pit is not, it does not meet safety standards.
Scott, I used that guide you talked about when in development for upgrading American River College for the last year's Masters Championships. And we still found things that were substandard or they were minimized, but just the same. We found some things that we could improve upon.
So Phil, is the document that we're both referring to, do you think it's adequate? Do you think there needs to be something added to it?
Oh, definitely add to it. There's a lot of things that we can definitely add to.
And would you volunteer to help with that?
I can.
Okay, the contact individual along with me will be Rich Shorenstein. He's the temporary head of the best practices. So let's tag team on that.
Sure, be glad to.
Anybody else on this call
Last
want to help
comment,
out?
please. Last comment, please.
Well, just a
Can
make
we also make
Randall,
sure?
Randall, just a minute. if there's anybody else who is interested in being involved in that very thing, which is to take a look at the facilities preparation under in best practices, send me an email. I've just sent you my address in the chat, and I will make sure that you are in possession of that document so that you can look it over. And we'd appreciate your good help. Thank you. Go ahead, Randall.
The last thing I would say, we have rule books that the officials have to read, have to go through. We get a new book, every 2 years, every year we get a new book. How many of these facilities, or can we make the coaches, the ADs, and everything look at these books instead of just have them up on the shelf, say, I got a book?
There is a precedent for this.
That's what. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Randall. There is a precedent for this in the American College of Sports Medicine, and in development of gym and certification of fitness instructors and the like. They had developed a facility guidebook of what to have, and it addressed a lot of safety concerns and then addressed a lot of different things. This is very, very similar. It's just a different venue. And so I would probably use that as my guide in developing this, because a facility standards guidebook would be great. And because right now we just have 1 or 2 sheets that are in the resources book. Or
And you have that one document?
The facility standards guide?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's
okay.
It's sitting on my just to the left of me, to the right of me right now.
Email me the specifics about that, please.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
everybody.
Thank you very much. Great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye, y'all.